Welcome to the Noodle Podcast. We are Kate and Max, and we love noodling on what we've learned by accident. This podcast is a space where we share how we get the best out of ourselves and the people we've worked with. In today's episode, we talk about managing space, literally and metaphorically, that allows everyone to speak up. We cover tools and techniques for taking different perspectives, and we talk about being brave enough to involve the people who challenge you most. So episode 10, which is Ignore Me at Your Peril. That sounds a little bit threatening.
Yes, and it is, actually.
I think we meant it to be a lot more inclusive, because this is about how do you make sure you're not ignoring people whose opinion could be really helpful to you, even if you are tempted to leave them out of the conversation for whatever reason. Maybe you find them difficult, maybe you find them threatening. So we're going to talk a bit about times when we have learnt it's better to be creating an environment where people can speak up honestly and truthfully. You might hear things that you don't want to hear, but ultimately you're going to get to a better place. Is that right?
Yes. So Ignore Me at Your Peril is more about not having all the information you might want or need to get to a good outcome. Or because you're wanting to go too fast just to get stuff done, and then it drags you back, or you miss something. There's so many examples.
Yeah.
And then there is the little edgy one where somebody might come along and just be deliberately awkward if you ignore them.
Yes.
So let's start talking about how to make sure that you include people. So I think back to right at the beginning when we first started working together outside of corporate world, and we went on one of our learning experiences, let's put it that way. We went on one of our learning experiences and we learned about liberating structures. And we learned about this really simple technique called 1, 2, 4, all. And I remember at the time it kind of blowing my mind a little bit, because it was one of those things where it's like, if I'd have known this years ago, it could have cut my meetings that were hours long down to something that could be done in like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. And it fits right with what we talked about in our very first episode, Quiet Doesn't Mean Lazy. It allows people to contribute no matter whether they're very comfortable speaking up in groups or not. Everyone, in quite a short space of time, using this technique, gets to have a say. Do you want to describe how it works?
Yeah. So 1, 2, 4, all does what it says on the tin. You set your frame, your question to the group, and you ask people for 1 minute, think about what's going to make an amazing birthday party for Max when she gets out of lockdown. I get 1 minute. I get 1 minute to write down all their brilliant ideas.
So it's silent brainstorming. It's just on your own, having a think. Nobody talks. And as a facilitator, I quite like going up, because it's quite tempting for people just to check with each other, isn't it? So you say, literally, just do it on your own.
Yeah. Then 2 minutes in pairs, sharing your ideas, kind of seeing whether you can do a yes and. So it might be that you've got a brilliant idea for my birthday, I've got a brilliant idea for my birthday, but as a result of the two of us talking for 2 minutes, we come up with even more, or a blended idea.
So you just turn to the person next to you or opposite you if you're at a table. Or if we're doing it in virtual space, you'd put people into breakout rooms just to do it in pairs.
Then you go to 4. So then you bring people into groups of 4. So you've got 4 minutes together in a 4, again, sharing ideas and you're building. And then the last stage is when you bring everybody together and each group of 4 shares their best ideas or their thoughts. What it depends on the frame you set for the question, really. And that last bringing everybody together, if you kind of add it up, just depends on how long you give for the all bit and how many groups of 4 you've got. But you can really get things moving in the space of 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's funneling ideas. It's also people confirming with each other or getting inspiration from each other about what could be good, what could be great.
I think as well, it's that fact that you're definitely including everybody. The process invites everybody to participate and it builds. So instead of asking the nervous person or more reserved person to speak up in the middle of a room of 30 people and say, what's your idea? You allow people to sort of build up to the big room experience, and you don't have to be the person that voices in that moment, but you have participated. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And what you said about it working in, a very short space of time is so important. I think that's why it's tempting for people to move along too quickly, thinking they've got all the ideas they need. Or if you're in a team meeting, again, in an actual room or virtually, you've probably got an agenda of things you need to get through. You might throw it out to the group. And I can't bear it when people say, okay, what does everyone think? Silence. Right, I take silence as yes, fine, move on. That is the worst thing you can do. That's the best way to drive
resistance, frustration.
Resistance. Yeah. Or those people who don't like what you've said are likely to go off and
the saboteurs.
They're saboteurs. Yeah. Yeah, that'll never work. And those people can feel they've not really had a chance to speak up. It's really good if you can say at the beginning of a session, get ready. I'm going to ask each one of you to tell me what you think about this idea. I'm just looking for 30 seconds or less, but I am going to come to each one of you and do it as a round robin rather than this gaping silence that nobody wants to break, or the usual people jump in. Can I tell you about one of the worst examples of that?
Yeah.
I was in a team where I think there were various characters in the team and there were various processes that were working against each other. So we had a really difficult situation where we weren't able to move forward with a project because half the team were trying to do it one way, half the team were trying to do it a different way, and it just wasn't working. So thankfully, the manager recognised there was a problem, got everyone in a room, said, okay, right, we need to brainstorm what's going on here. What's irritating you? What do you think the problem is? So that's great. Get everyone involved. Someone got a pen, someone started writing up on the whiteboard as people were contributing. Then the manager stood up and said, no, that's not right, and disagreed with some of the things that were being said and crossed out what had been written up on the whiteboard, and then just took over really with the pen. Right, okay, what do you think? And somebody else would say something and you go, no, that's not it at all, and wouldn't write that thing up, and so on and so on and so on. So you've got to be prepared to hear things that might be uncomfortable. And if you really want people to be open, you have to let them say what they're going to say. It was bad.
I think when you talk about, things being, opposing forces almost, that reminds me of situations I've been in the past where I get invited in to invite the elephant into the room. And that awkward moment where you're trying to bring a topic onto the table that everybody's been talking about outside the room, and the sort of avoidance of the topic or the about the topic, that sort of thing, is how do you bring it in a way that everybody feels is safe and it's okay. And like you say, that uncomfortable feeling is getting everybody to a position of feeling comfortable, feeling uncomfortable, because the conversation you're going to have is actually going to lead to a good outcome, and not just let everybody keep backbiting and moaning or just getting frustrated.
There's something else that we both really like and that goes down well with groups who need to say the unsayable in a way that isn't career limiting for them. That's de Bono's 6 hats thinking, which is really good for projects, but it's also good for allowing people to take different perspectives or different positions on an issue. And you get everybody to be the people who say, okay, so what are the risks here? What's the downside? And then move on and say, okay, so what's the upside? What's the great possibility behind this idea? And even if people are feeling, I can't see this working, you say, okay, but if it could work, what could be the possibility? And what do we feel about this? And you move through 6 different ways of putting a lens on the issue, which can be quite liberating, can't it? It means people are moving into a position they don't usually take.
That's the fist of five, and you use it in a different way to the way I use it. So I use it more at the end. So I use it as a way of, right, we've had a great meeting. We feel that everybody's contributed. We've agreed some actions. And it's just a sense check at the end of the meeting. Right, okay, so how much do we believe in this thing? Or how committed are we to this thing? Or sort of asking that question that's sometimes, as you say, sometimes hard to put into words. And that sense of a fist of five being, if you put your 5 fingers, well, 4 fingers and 1 thumb up, then you're saying you're absolutely in, totally bought into it, or maybe not, maybe we go 3, which then gives you a sense of, okay, we've still got more work to do. But you use it in a different way, don't you?
Yeah, I tend to do it as a temperature pulse check, maybe at the beginning of a session to find out, I guess the same thing, but how are people feeling? So I would say, and you don't want people to overthink this either. So you would very quickly say, I'm going to ask on the count of 3 for you to put up as many fingers as you are feeling great about this. So no hands, no fingers means I hate this. I would rather be anywhere but here, quite frankly. Count me out. 5 is, yeah, I'm so into this. It's great. So you go 1, 2, 3, and then you've got everyone holding their fingers up, and everyone can look around and go, oh, we've got a couple of 1s or 2s. All right, okay. And it's not about, making people feel uncomfortable, but just going, have we got consensus that everyone's very happy here, or are people feeling a bit tired or over this, or whatever it is? You can just check and then redo it at the end. It's a nice sort of calibration. How are we doing type of thing? Yeah.
And that allows everybody else as well to take responsibility for getting everybody sort of wanting to participate. So you're not just sitting there feeling that you don't want to join in if you're the 2 or the 3 and everybody else is in the bouncy 5 zone, but that everybody's acknowledging that you're not all in the same space and working together on it, so that you don't be, as I might be sometimes, Mrs. Annoying Bouncy all the time and not necessarily recognising that everybody else isn't quite as enthusiastic as me, maybe. So, yeah, good way to check. Just rewinding back there a little bit about something you said, which reminds me of a couple of people I used to work with. So the hats thing, the idea that each of us can, as a group, collectively occupy each of those hats to look at things. But I remember encountering, there's been a couple of people over my career who were the people that every time I came up with a brilliant idea told me it was rubbish. I mean, That wasn't what they said. They asked lots of questions. They challenged me on my idea. They painted a picture of, but what if, and that sort of thing. And it felt like they were telling me my idea was rubbish. And I would maybe try to avoid them with my ideas. But that would be something that would come back and bite me, because the thing with those people was they were really good at trying to understand my idea through their questions, but I didn't see it like that. I saw it as they were picking my idea apart, they were dissing me. And actually what I learned was, go to those people, go and say, I've had this idea and I need your help now to pull it apart. Let's pull it apart. Let's see where it's broken, where it's not going to work. And then you can help me build an even better idea or way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So be courageous, be brave. And don't, whatever you do, assume that you're not hearing anything. So that means everyone's fine.
And you're making me think about, who am I inadvertently ignoring? I'm going to go and have a think about some of the teams I'm working with at the moment and whether I'm really including everybody. Yeah, time to do a bit of a sense check.
Yeah, brilliant. So we can recommend, in terms of noodles, the 6 hats is a really good way to think about perspectives. 1, 2, 4 all as a wonderful liberating structure. You'll find out more on theaccidentalmanager.com. Thanks for today. Cheers. Thank you very much for joining us on our lockdown episode today. We'd love to know what you think and any experiences you have that you're happy to share. Please join us at noodle.space. Don't forget to subscribe, share and leave us a review. And you can now follow us on Instagram at noodle_space. We'll see you next time.